Hey guys. So as promised, today I'm gonna be talking about my last relationship, what it was like as someone with BP, um, what my experiences were in it. So I have to give some of the backstory context for this. So I met my ex when I was in high school. Um, it was a really difficult time in my life um, when I met her because I was moving out of living with my mom to living with my dad. My mom's mental health was like really all over the place, and we basically all of us decided that it was going to be better to move in with my dad. But none of us really expected that my mom was gonna just like cold turkey drop out of the family. So I met my ex while I was in high school, um, and it was a rough time for me. I was still kind of adjusting to my new life, and you know, I went to school outside of my hometown, so I didn't really know anybody. And I met my ex, and the circumstances of us meeting were a little strange. I was dating someone, and she was dating someone, and I met her, and when I met her, it was like it's like a circuit connected in my brain. Um, it was just like this is like the person that you need in your life. You know, if you've ever had one of those moments where like you meet someone and you're just like, that's the person. That's who I need. Well, I met her and I was very emotionally shut down in high school. I was just like not there. I mean, I was like asleep through most of my classes, and I was like really struggling. And she would ask me how I was doing every day in chemistry, and nobody else did that. Not even my girlfriend at the time. And I valued her attention so much that I remember I broke up with my girlfriend um, to be with her, and she stayed with her boyfriend at the time. Um, and I was in a pretty dark place that year, and I just remember it got worse as the year progressed, and I got to this like super dark place where I was like very depressed. I wasn't leaving the house. I wasn't doing anything. And it kind of the depression ramped up uh, into the following year, into my junior year in high school. And the crux of it was basically like I was at the most depressed I had ever been in my life. And I remember I was sitting with her in English class, and I asked her, like, are we ever gonna be together? Like, is there ever gonna be a world where like we work out? Because I had like pined over her and like waited and I just like needed an answer. And she was like, I'll let you know. Um, I'll let you know like soon. And so she sent me a letter um at the end of the month, like as the school year was ending, that said she didn't want to talk to me anymore. And she broke up with her boyfriend at the time. And this was like very devastating for me. I had put like a lot of emotional like energy like honestly, I should have just there's that whole thing of like take mixed signals as a no, which I should have done, but like I don't know, when you're young and like you don't know any better. I didn't know any better. Um, I didn't know any better. So I spent like that whole summer just like reeling over it, like that rejection, and I lost a lot of weight and I got really skinny. And I went back to school that following September, just about the skinniest I'd ever been in my life. That was the skinniest I've ever been. I weighed about 125. It was like a very unhealthy weight for me. And I didn't talk to her, but I started running track. And all through that year, I didn't really speak to my ex. Um, but I started like running and doing things to like increase my self-esteem a little bit, and like I didn't feel the need to talk to my ex during that time period. But at the end of the year, we were all playing video games, and I spoke to her, um, or not really spoke to her. I like played games with her towards the end of the year. We were like all playing Mario Kart together, and it was like, even though she said she never wanted to talk to me again, um, we had like this like brief reprieve or something. Um, and then after that, I went away to college, up in Boston. And when I went away to college, um, I like had her in the back of my mind. Like I was meeting some girls and like, um, not really uh, getting anywhere, with any of the girls on campus. Um, so it came to like the summertime, when I had like my first like real encounter with BP, and I had my first manic episode. And after my first manic episode, I was in like such a desperate and super intense place. I mean, mania is really scary. Uh, you're literally like grasping at straws. And after my first manic episode, I was like, let me try to get some closure with this girl. Um, just to like tie up some loose ends. And so I went to her house. This was the summer of 20. I want to say the summer of 2011. I went to her house, and she had just come home from work, and she never told me this, but she actually just kind of finished a mini relationship with someone we knew in high school. And it was kind of one of those situations where like you just like lay all your cards out on the table. So like I saw her and I was like, okay, is this it? Was high school just like the wrong time? Like could it have worked some other time? Um, and yeah, I mean it was just like uh, I I felt better, you know, when I was around her. Um, and yeah, I spent most of that summer like with her, and it was like super fun. It was like my first real relationship. Um, it was like exciting to like do stuff that I always wanted to get to do with her, and to like spend time with her, and everything was like insanely exciting. Like everything we did together, even just like walking down the street, holding her hand was exciting. Um, and it came time for me to go back to school. And when I went back to school, um, I started to have a rough time. I mean, I was set up for a rough time because, like, the aftermath of a manic episode, suffering. Lots of suffering. Your head hurts, you don't feel well, you can't focus. And I didn't really want to be back at school. Truthfully, I should have taken the semester off and just, like, restructured myself and gotten myself back together, but I don't know, something compelled me to go back, and so I went back to school, and things were really hard, and like I was also starting this new relationship with someone, and I ended up like spending all of my money um, seeing her, uh, and so what I would do is every weekend when my classes ended, I would immediately hop on a bus, take a bus from Boston down to New York City, and spend the weekend just with her, like palling around. And it didn't matter like what we did to me. I was just happy to see her. Like it didn't matter if we like walked around or, um, you know, like lots of the time we just started walking around New York City. Um, but yeah, so that's what I started doing, and the juxtaposition of like my coming down from the manic episode and spending a lot of my time on buses, like it just kind of started to wear me down. Like it wore me down and it wore me down, and I don't think I did very well those couple semesters. Like my grades were probably okay, but like nothing amazing. Probably like C's and B's from what I remember. Um, but yeah, so like during this time, um, I kind of started to acknowledge that I couldn't be the only one going to visit her. Like I needed her to come up to see me sometimes. And that resulted in her coming to see me um, like once or twice. Um, and I remember it being like kind of nice. I mean, she didn't visit me at all my first year. My second year, she visited twice. Um, but even in the early stages of this relationship, like this, I was like really straining to like see her, and it didn't feel like even. Um, it felt like a lot of the effort was coming from my end. Um, but yeah, so like with the time went on, and I moved off of living on campus to living in a house with some friends. And the first year was actually awesome. I was living with one of my good friends, a couple of my good friends, and it just felt like the good old days, Like even though my girlfriend wasn't there, I was like surrounded by people I really cared about, and I was like happy, Even though I didn't have her around, it felt good. But my friends graduated and they moved, and a bunch of new people came into the house, and it was just me and this other friend who, like, he spent all of his time outside of the house, so I never saw him anyway. And I started to get, like, really lonely. Um, and loneliness for someone with BP is, like, it's not like regular person loneliness where, like, oh, you go out and you see people. It's, like, deep existential pain. And it was in the midst of like this extreme or like these extreme bouts of loneliness that like something like physically started to go wrong with me. Like I actually um like I developed this like really bad cyst on my lower back, and it was incredibly painful. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't focus, I was in pain like all the time. And So yeah, like I was doing poorly in school. I was very lonely. I was very sad. I felt very disconnected from like everyone and everything. And it was like in the midst of this super lonely bout um, that I decided like I couldn't do school up in Boston anymore. And I started planning to move back. And part of moving back was like I could finally spend more time with my ex. Um, and it would like solve things. Um, So I moved back home, and I got this incredibly painful surgery to get rid of the cyst, and then there was like a bunch of months where I was like recouping, and my ex was working this really intense job at the time at this like tiny graphic design firm where she was working from 8 o'clock in the morning until like 9, 10 at night. And the only times I could see her was if I picked her up. So I was going to school, um, coming home, sometimes tutoring, and then after doing all those things, I would pick up my ex and I would spend like an hour or two with her, and she would leave her job like decimated. Like she was like out of commission. Her back hurt. She was like tired. Um, and so like a lot of the times I would pick her up and she would just lie down in like pain and I would like rub her back and take her home. Um, and that was like all we'd do. And that was a lot of that year. When I first came home, it was like I had my surgery. Um, I uh, I I recouped, and then uh, that following year, actually, I know I didn't include this in the video I did about my first manic episode, but a lot of what triggered my first manic episode was just the stress of school, work, and picking up my ex from work and taking her home every day. Because it was like 2 hours in transit every day in a car. Um, so yeah, so we did that for like a solid year of just my ex working until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And I would pick her up, and I would take her back to my house, and we would spend a little bit of time together, and then I would take her home, and it felt very lonely, being back home, because like even though I was seeing my ex, the time we were spending together was like less quality time. It was more um, desperate, it was sad. Um, and it felt sad. Like I felt bad. I stopped feeling like recharged when I saw her. Um, and like seeing her kind of became like a ritual chore, like it stopped being like something I like super enjoyed doing. Um, and that led into uh, the following summer, um, where I was back home. I was going to school at NJIT, and my ex decided that like she just couldn't do the job she was doing anymore. She had to get a better job. So on top of working this job that was 8 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, my ex started taking a UI course online. And she started doing like UX design stuff. And that summer, um, and this is while she's still working the job, she spent all of her time working on this UX course. And the only time I could see her was when she was working on the course. So I started like working on the stuff with her, and like we spent all of our time together, like working on her website and doing stuff for her job. Um, and I was happy to help. It was like it was somebody I still cared a lot about. Um, and you know, our time together went from being like time enjoying each other to like her career, which was fine because I was like, I'm helping this person I really care about get a better job, you know? So I was like, I will support you any way that I can. Um, and so that led into my last year at NJIT, which turned out to be like the most stressful year because I had to do student teaching. Um, so, I went into my senior year, and this was really like uh, the beginning of our relationship just like completely falling apart. Um, I remember all this coincided with some other things, just for like background purposes. As like me and my ex started to spend like less and less quality time together, I started working on this album. Um, in retrospect, it was really an album about how lonely I felt and how frustrated I was with the relationship. Um, but at the time, like I couldn't really process those emotions because I was so like deep deep in it. Um, but my ex found a better job. It paid a lot more, and I was like super happy for her. She started going to work in the city, coming back home at the same time every night so I could pick her up from the train station. And I started doing like my senior year stuff and like planning my graduation. And that whole year, things started to like really fall apart, and not just like in the relationship. Like my health really started to fall apart. I didn't have a what's it called a manic episode, but during my student teaching, I had a panic attack. And I thought I was having a heart attack, but when I went to the ER, they were like, "No, this is not a heart attack; it's a panic attack." So I had a panic attack, and I'd never experienced one of those before, so it was like really super horrifying for me. Um, it was like one of the most intense things I've ever gone through. Um, and the time I would spend with my ex, like after she got her job, started to feel weird. Um, like she over the course of the last like year had started texting this guy that she worked with a lot, who it turns out she'd been texting him a lot all along, which like I'm not like the jealous type or anything, but she spent like every single day texting this guy. Um, and like I remember that year she bought me a birthday present, and I returned it. And it was a fairly cheap present. I asked for a guitar pedal, and when I got the pedal, it just didn't feel right. And I was like, yeah, I returned it. I told her I returned it. Um, when we went to restaurants, um, she would order like something expensive from the menu, and I would order something really cheap, and we'd split the bill. And like she made a lot more than I did at the time. I mean, she still does, but back then she did. So it was like really hard for me. Um, and things were just getting worse. Um, like our sex life was just like bad. Um, I mean, it was like pretty good at one point, or at least I thought it was good. But it got to the point where like we weren't having sex unless like she initiated it because I felt like so uncomfortable about asking. Um, but yeah, everything just kind of started to feel weird. And I remember there was this one day where like my physical body was just like not doing well. I was having like these pains in my uh, chest, and I thought my appendix burst, and I went to the hospital, and I drove myself there, and she didn't like come to the hospital to see if I was okay. Um, but everything kind of came to like a head after I graduated. Like I could feel like the distance even like expanding within then. Um, and I remember the events of like the last month of our relationship more vividly than I remember any of the 6 or so years like we spent together. Um, she just started looking at me differently, you know, like she started like everything became an argument, you know, like every little thing I did, it didn't matter like how I spoke to her or like how I did things. Um and I just remember feeling like very confused and frustrated because like even though the relationship was shit, I was still 100% invested in it. You know, like in the relationship, and I hadn't really registered yet that she was like pretty checked out, and like trying her hardest to like find an excuse to leave. Um, but yeah, she started acting really strange towards me, and I remember one day, uh, we were like having sex, and uh, she was like, "You can stop at any time," and I just like I remember that moment so intensely. Um, like I remember how she looked at me when she said it. It was like very like condescendingly, like it was like such an intense moment of worthlessness. It was like incredibly painful. Um, and yeah, it was like such a super naked moment for me. I hope no one ever has to feel like that terrible about themselves, as I like came to feel in that moment. And then after that, like I knew something was like very wrong, because she'd never done something like that before. And we went to go see a band, um, and when we went to the show, like it was again like she kept her distance from me like the whole time, and she like wouldn't look at me. Um, this was a band. It was the Pillows. It's the band that did all the Fooly Cooly soundtrack. Um, so yeah, we went to go see this band, and you know, uh, it's like the show was great, but the whole time, like, she wouldn't look at me, she wouldn't talk to me. And as we were leaving the venue, same thing, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't talk to me. And I was like, is something wrong? Like, did I do something? And she was like, no, no, you didn't do anything. Um, and then, like, finally, um, she came over to my house, and this was like the strangest night of my life. Um, she came over to my house and she offered to sleep over, which she almost never did over the course of our 7-year relationship. Like this was it was a weird relationship. Um, but the way it ended was like truly miraculously strange. Um, because I think like in its ending, she acknowledged that like she wasn't really there for me in like almost this nonchalant way. Like because she offered to sleep over in order to break up with me, which is like I can't even explain like what that's like after a long lonely relationship, like for someone to like offer to sleep over. But she offered to sleep over, and she was like, I don't think I can't even remember the exact words. It's like I don't think I can date you anymore. I'm not attracted to you, and that was the reason she gave. Which at that point in time, that was very reasonable. I mean, I had gained a lot of weight. Um, I was like not doing well. Like my body was like falling apart. My mental health was like really in a dark place. Um, and she was like, "I'm not attracted to you anymore." And I was like, "Okay." Um, and we had this big trip planned. Um, and I was very excited for the trip because it was to Florida. And we took a trip to Florida that was like really nice. Um, it was a beautiful trip. Florida was gorgeous, and we saw the Keys and a bunch of other stuff. Um, but yeah, I remember like holding her and her telling me that like she wasn't attracted to me anymore, and she offered to like still go on the trip with me, even though like we weren't dating anymore, and I was like, no, no, thank you, I don't want to go on that trip, and she left the next morning, and she said she didn't want to talk to me for a month. Um, so we waited a month, and in the meantime, while this is going, like my fight or flight response system was like completely triggered. I was like, oh, she's not attracted to me. I need to lose weight. I lost 25 pounds in like a month. Like I went from weighing like 170 down to like 150. It was an insane amount of weight to lose in a short span of time. Like I was like, I tore myself apart trying to like fix her not finding me attractive, and you know, it like breaks my heart looking back on it, because it was so clearly there was more fucked up with the relationship than how attractive I was. um but so I lost all this weight, and I went to go see her, um you know, to like ask for her to like see me again. And you know, I remember I took her out, and at this point, like, things were irreparably fucked up. I mean, you know, um, it was like one of the craziest exercises in futility ever committed by a human being. But I took her to the Outback Steakhouse, um, and we went out to eat, and we started arguing like almost immediately. Um, I was like, do you like, would you want to try a relationship again? Like, and she just started arguing with me. And it was like so far gone at that point. Um, there was like not very much salvageable, but like the internal battle of um like not feeling good enough for her, it like kept me losing weight, and I lost weight up until I weighed about like 138 and had my third manic episode, which I did talk about on this channel. Um, so after my episode, or I guess during it, I was in a really like rough place emotionally, and I reached back out to my ex, just cause like she was like a safe space for me, however like emotionally unavailable she was. And I reached back out to her, and um, you know, initially it was like a nice conversation, and you know, she told me a little bit about how like she was dating some 37-year-old dude now, and I was like, oh, that's great, like that's good for you. And like the conversation was fine, but like I started feeling like that gnawing, empty feeling again. You know, I was like, oh, like look, she's moved on, and look at you. What are you doing? Like, what's your plan? And I felt like very down about the way I looked. And I remember I messaged her one day, and I was like, I'm not good looking. And like, she was like, oh, you know, you're very handsome. And I was like, no, you don't think I'm handsome. Like, you broke up with me, and the only reason you gave was that you weren't attracted to me. You very clearly don't think I'm handsome. And like, while we were having this conversation, all of the like negative stuff from that relationship, like all of the loneliness, all of the moments of just like uh her not being there for me emotionally when I needed someone, like they all hit me, and I was like, no, what you did to me, our relationship, the whole thing was nasty. Like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And that was the last time I spoke to her. And I didn't say anything like extremely mean. I just said like, what you did to me was nasty. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Um, and that was the last time I spoke um, to my ex. Um, and you know, I've thought about talking to her every day, um, every single day. But I know that it's not healthy, and that if I did talk to her, I wouldn't have anything good to say. That relationship was built so poorly and in such a poor context. I mean, there was no there's no chance for us to be actual friends. Any friendship we would have would just be toxic, I think. Um, and especially just like the loneliness of those last 2 years, um, there's no way to reconcile that in a friendship. There was just like too much. There was too much. Um, but in terms of like things I can grow from and do better in, a lot of the loneliness in that relationship was not her. It was just me. I didn't reach out to people. I could have spent more time with friends. Um, I didn't communicate like my emotional needs very well. I didn't like ask for more of her time. I didn't talk about when I was feeling lonely. Um, and I could have I could have done better. I could have taken better physical care of myself. I mean, I got to the point where I was like, I mean, in truth, I think the reason I was so heavy, and like I got to the point that I did was because I was so neglected, not just by the person I was dating, but like by myself. Like I wasn't taking good care of myself. But I could have done way better in just like being a good person to myself and taking care of my own needs, and really paying attention to like how I was feeling. I think I neglected my needs so heavily in that relationship that it just all came to a head. There were and are a lot of things that she's always been much better at than me. She always took great care of herself. I mean, she always looked amazing. She's like a beautiful person. Um, and she was always better at like committing to work stuff. Like when she commits to work stuff, she's like 100% in it. And I've always struggled with that. I mean, I've always kind of felt like my head was in two places at once. Um, and I like really admire her for those things. But it's like sometimes there's just nothing that you can salvage. Sometimes you just have to cut your losses and move on. Um, and it's sad, you know. Um, I mean, like, I still cry sometimes over like not getting to see her family, and like I was very close to them, or at least like I thought I was. Um, and you know, not that I don't have a family, because I do, and they're wonderful people, but I've always struggled with feeling like I don't have enough family. Um, and when I was dating her, I got the feeling that like I was part of a family again, and sometimes I miss that feeling. They invited me to like all the holidays, and I loved going to her holiday stuff. She hated it. She complains, and when I went, I always felt so good because it was like I was part of a family. And I've always like wanted that feeling of just like feeling like I was in a family. Um, So it was hard. It was hard to accept that like it wasn't uh it wasn't a healthy relationship in any sense. Um, that it wasn't like something that I could continue to be a part of in any capacity. But I think it was like necessary for like my growth as a person. Um, 'Cause I'm not like as down on myself as I used to be. I take much better care of myself. I don't have the same like body aches and pains that I used to. Um, my body feels a lot more like relaxed. I sleep better. Um, and I think in order for those things to happen, I needed to like completely stop talking to this person and just move on with my life. Um, and that's more or less the story of my last relationship. I mean, there's like more details. There's like vacations we took together, and there's like good memories I have of her that if I dig deep, I can probably think of them. Um, she used to make me really nice cards. Um, I don't have any of them anymore. I got rid of all of them because they were too painful to look at. But she like there was a time when our relationship was really good. Um, it started out as something like nice, and I think when stuff ends, um, you go back to the good memories, but you have to remember that the person they were and the person you were just don't exist anymore, that you can't bring that back, that it's just gone. Um, and you have to go on with your life. Um, so yeah, that's it. That was my last relationship. So tomorrow, I think what I'm gonna talk about is my like struggles with body image, um, or my thoughts about like body image and self-love and self-care and how I like deal with all that stuff because I've had like a lot of different thoughts on it over the years. Um, but yeah, so that's gonna be my talk for tomorrow. So I know this was like super heavy, and honestly doubt anyone is ever gonna listen to this stuff. But I'm casting out. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.